Hello, everybody. Before I say anything that pertains to my experience at Redmond Valley Community College, I would like to say that I officially finished my fourth semester at RV in the spring of 2025. So, yeah. So, during my first semester at Redmond Valley, it was in the fall of 2023, like months after I graduated high school. I didn't know what it was about. I didn't know about how much coursework I was going to get. I was just a new student, not knowing anything about the college. So before I actually took classes, I was taking some acuplacer for math and English, which I probably didn't do the best on, but when I took my English acuplacer, it actually got me into the workshop that I had to take in the fall. So I had to take an extra English course, which wouldn't earn me any credits, which was called English 070. And I also had to take English 111, where's the course number. And then another thing, that the math class was full and I wasn't able to take it until 2 semesters later. So I did good on that one, so I got to go right up to Math 107, and it was part of my P12 education curriculum. So to study for the acuplacer, I actually looked at the review sheets while I was at track practice back in high school, my senior year. And then I figured that it would probably be doable to do. So then I looked them over and I thought I was going to be able to do them afterwards. I was probably going to be able to do the math, but looking at the English, I had to write like a few paragraphs and many sentences. I don't know what But all I had to do was just go into the testing center, look at some stuff, and figure out what I want to write for my essay. I did do fine for the English essay, but apparently it wasn't good enough to get into the English 111 on its own without the workshop. So I did have to have English 4 days a week in the fall semester of 2023. And then back in August of 2023, I was looking at some Canvas classroom, and I was looking at it before I left for Oasis of the Seas. If you remember that video that I was doing many seasons ago, I was playing the same Fortnite game, but except I was playing with a few friends and I talked about the Oasis cruise itself. I actually did go on there twice as of now, but I told you guys that I was on the cruise when I was 6 for the first time before they built the water slides. But let's get back to what I was doing before I was going on the cruise. So I was looking at all the assignments in my English class, and they were actually pretty packed. I had to do a lot of self-reflections, critical reading homeworks, and 3 essays. It was a lot. But at least my professor gave me time to do it in class, that was the better part for it. I don't know what's going on, but I wasn't really good at English at first because during the first 2 critical reading homeworks, I didn't get a perfect 100. I think the first 2 were I had to write on a certain article, and I had to get a series of articles another week. And then I could miss 2 without penalty because the lowest 2 scores are dropped. And at least I did all of them to my advantage. And then on to the self-reflections, which I had to do 7 of them. And I could do 1 without penalty. I could miss 1 or skip 1. But I couldn't skip the first one or the last one. And that was pretty much my English course. And I ended the course off with some pizza and just talking about some stuff that we're going to do over winter break. So that was the English class. And then on to our history class, where we usually had some kind of discussion every class meeting, and we always had to do some discussion leader, and we also had to do some in-class writings, and we had to watch videos, and we also had to do some document-based questions, which I really struggled with because I only got 7 out of 10 on the first one I ever did. I took US 202 before 201. So when I took 202, I actually did pretty good with the reading. I had to spend 2 hours outside of class for every hour in class. And then I had to read about 10 pages a day or whatever homework I needed. And then I was able to get through that course that way. And then on to the Portrait of a Visionary, when I had to do the second last assignment of the semester, I had to do some kind of biography report on a person that is known for that time period during the US 202 is pretty much from 1877 to the present. I had to do mine on Cesar Chavez, and to write about that, he had something to do with produce grapes, and he tried to remove poison from them so that way people don't eat poisonous grapes. I don't remember much from the course since it's been a while back, but at least I have some fond memory about it. And then for the final portfolio, I had to write everything that had to do in the course. I had to reflect on every single discussion leader assignment, document-based questions, any in-class writings. I had to write 7 full pages and many paragraphs. I don't remember how many paragraphs I had to write, but it was sure a lot. So then I had to do that on Portfolio, which I had to create a new account for since I lost the password to my old one. So then that was hard because I had to uncheck a box, which I somehow forgot to do. Because before you know it, I actually had to go to Hong Kong to see my grandpa for the last time for the last 2 days. He was alive, so I had to go see him in the hospital. We had to fly to Hong Kong, and I felt like I was in a rush to do that. But hey, at least I got the opportunity to see him for the last time. And yeah, I'm actually glad I even went. And it was considered a critical period for the month leading up to his death, in which I had to do all my assignments like right away. And I had to write all my essays, do all my final projects, and just rush through it. But that was what led to me forgetting to uncheck a box, which my professor said that I needed to do, otherwise my final portfolio reflected a 0 for the assignment because he wasn't able to see it. And I had to explain to him why I was out of the country, and that way I could request a change of grade for the fall semester. And then onto my Pathways to College Success course. So that was a 2-credit course that had no prerequisites. All I had to do in there was just write some cover letters and just pay attention in class to any kind of college skills I can ever acquire become successful. It wasn't like I needed to take any exams, it was just some college readiness and preparedness. And that was once a week. Wednesdays from 9 to 10:50, depending on when your section is, but hey, not all courses are offered at the same time. So then on to my spring semester in 2024, I did take English again, I did take Foundations of Education, and I did take Environmental Studies. There was only one Environmental Studies section, which I had to take from 8:30 to 9:50, and I did not like the professor because he always gave 0s on the journal reports and environmental issue topic. I did get a 0 on one of them, maybe not all of them, but I think at least 2 of them I got 0s because I wasn't supposed to draw on my notebook. I was supposed to record some observation. I didn't know what the assignment was talking about, but hey, at least I passed and got a C. Another thing with the midterm and the final on that class was I had to do some multiple choice online, and I took it at home, thank God, because I would have taken it in a testing center and it would have been much worse. And then another time, I had to use a plastic bag to fill some kind of Excel spreadsheet in which I had no idea how to do. I felt like I was lost doing that assignment. Like there was no other professor who had me use Excel. I mean, I usually use it for different purposes, but I'm really used to Google Sheets if I want to fill like out data or something, but you know, you get the idea. And then for the final essay, I got a 0 on that as well because I emailed my professor on whether I was plagiarizing or not. Apparently, he was accusing me of plagiarizing whether it was not or false or not, but hey, if he believes that I was doing it, then fine. I mean, there's no other way. Sometimes I worry about myself plagiarizing by chance, meaning I don't know what the exact words are and I have to scan for plagiarism before I turn in my work. And I tried the Glean app, which was involved in my Center for Accessibility Inclusive Education. And I didn't find it real helpful because it was just recording of the lecture itself. I didn't use it for 5 months, and my account is about to be deactivated as of now. I didn't find it real useful. But hey, at least I'm getting somewhere now. And then I did take the summer off for the spring of 2024 because I wanted to and not take any summer classes, but unless I needed to. At then I didn't need to, but when it came to the fall of 2024, pretty much got worse than the spring semester because I was taking full-time course. And then I did take the summer of 2024 off, but I took 4 classes in the fall originally. Took American Government and Politics, Intro to Psychology, Math 107, and US History 201. I took 202 before I took 201, and I can do that because that's part of my P12 education curriculum. So I was doing US History from the beginnings to 1877 rather than 1877 to the present. So my very first class of fall 2024 was American Government, and it was at 8:30 to 9:50. I did not like the course at all because for reasons why I didn't do well in the course. For one thing, the first assignment was to look at all the mayors and all the government positions. I had to get them in their correct spot and write a letter to my mayor, which I actually struggled on doing because I didn't understand the assignment, and I had to get all my government officials in, which was pretty annoying of an assignment. I know, it's really hard. And then I ended up having to do some readings from the Federalist Papers. I also had regular exams, which was the first semester I even had regular exams. I only ever had a midterm and then a final. I didn't know I had to take exam 1, 2, 3, and then a final. So then I did poorly on the exam after I was feeling sick during the first one. He said after I needed to look at the exam, I couldn't go back and not do it. Because as soon as I saw the exam, I just had to take it. Otherwise, if I got a second chance at doing it, seems like I have an advantage. So I just went right ahead and did it to the best of my ability. Even though I did everything I could to study, it was no point in doing so because I emailed my professor the night before and he said the exam was closed book and I had to not use any notes. I had to take notes for the entire course. You wrote like on the board and not using technology, I had to write every single thing in my notebook. And I felt like the notes on the exam weren't the same ones I took notes on, the ones that were on the board. Like, I just didn't get it. I didn't know what I needed to do at all. Like, I was just out of the blue. So I ended up getting a 44 on the exam because I didn't know what I was doing. I did go to the bathroom one time, and speaking of which, I have to ask to go to the bathroom, which is pretty old-fashioned. Usually in college, you can just get up and go. And the lectures were actually pretty boring. There was another time when I actually had to step out of the classroom to give myself a moment and then return back. And I felt like it was not so good of a course after all. And then eventually I dropped it after getting a 53 on my second exam, which I studied even harder for. I didn't end up doing good. It only brought my final grade up to a 50. It wasn't final, but they call it a final grade, which was more like my average. And then that's why I'm deciding to taking it in the summer. Intro to Psych was a little bit hard, but it wasn't as hard as Politics. So when I took Intro to Psych, I felt like course material was too much at first, and then I looked over the slides, and I didn't really study for the first exam, to be honest, but I got a 60, even though I did what I could, and I didn't create any flashcards or any matching multiple choice. All I did was just look it over, and that was how I did. And then for the second exam, similar to what I did in government, I did do a second exam, a third exam, and then a final exam, except they were more spread apart, and the American government course that I took in the past was more condensed, having the third exam as early as November 18th, the last day to drop and withdraw. And I withdrew before that date because I didn't want to risk getting my grade back for the book report, and I didn't want to fail for the semester. Because if I failed the course, then I failed for the semester, and then I'm going to have to take it again regardless. So then I just decided to drop it altogether. So intro to psych was actually slightly easier, but not as hard as other courses I've taken. I mean, it wasn't as bad as my government class, for as a matter of fact. And I didn't fail any exams. And in fact, I actually haven't even failed on a single assignment. I had to do some writing assignments, and I had to do a lot of reading. And after every chapter, it always happened to be the exam that I did the worst on. Because I got almost perfect grades on my writing assignments, and then I ended up getting a low grade on my exam. On the second exam for psych, I got 74. And then for the third exam, I got 60, another 60, which I thought was the same as the first exam. I thought when I got my third exam grade back, I thought my first exam grade was showing, but apparently it's the same one. So like I had 50 questions to do, and it was closed book, and I had to do it in the testing center on paper using a Scantron. And then each question was worth 2 points. I felt like I didn't know any answer to any of the questions because they showed real life examples to whether it was on the study guides. And then the same format on the final exam as far as questions, but it was online and I got to do it at home. And I did much better on that because it was open book. And some of the regular exam questions were also on the final. I wish I did better on the final exam, honestly. And then Math 107 came around, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to ace this. Because it's elementary math, and I ended up doing a good job on it, on most of the assignments. But when it came to the labs, especially after the second lab, I started doing poorly because it's meant to be a lab. Hence it's called a lab. It's meant to be an experiment. It's meant to get myself critical thinking and think outside the box on what I'm supposed to do on certain problems. But at least I handled it okay. And the homework was completely online. It was on my lab Math Pearson. And the tests were not as bad either because I knew how to do each of the problems. And my professor called them tests rather than exams, because an exam is when you have to actually figure out something and you have to study it and you know how to do it. You need to know every single fact on the chapter, and you have to recite everything that you take note of. So for the test number 1 for math, I got like a 90, second test a 97, and then the third test a 93. I didn't study as hard for the third test because, you know what, I thought I was going to be able to do it. On the final exam, however, I got 74 because I thought I was going to get 100, but somehow I just didn't do things right. And then following intro to psych, I'm going to have to take child psych as part of my degree. Just like it's a prerequisite, intro to psych is a prerequisite, child psych. And I have to take education and field experience, which is also succeeded by foundations of education, which I had to take before. And then spring 2025 came around, and it was the first semester which I didn't have both class and work on the same day, which means I only had class from Tuesday through Thursday. I had math and speech, which were Tuesday classes, and also met on Thursday, and my bio class was on Wednesday. And the times were math was from 11 to 12:50, speech from 2:30 to 4:05 because it was a 12-week class, and bio was from 9 to 10:50, and it was because it was a lab and it was not an actual class for the lecture, and I had to do everything online. So I really had some minimal coursework during the semester, except for the time when I had math. I had to do a lot of labs. I had one less lab than I did from the other semester, but it was still a good amount of coursework. In Math 107, I had 8 labs, but in Math 108, I had 7. So it was a pretty good balanced amount. Still did good as usual on the tests. I didn't do as good on the labs. I got a lot of low grades on the labs because they were meant to be hard. That's why they're called labs, as I said before. And then on the tests, I did fairly well. I got 98 on the test number 1. Number 2, I got 81. And on the third test, I think I was going to be able to do good. And I actually fretted the week before over the third test, which I got 95 on. And as well as the final exam, which I ended up getting a good 86 on, better than my 74 in Math 107. And it was based on geometry and statistics, which I had to do the 52 deck cards. And I had to figure out the probability of drawing whichever card it was. I also learned about permutations, which I had to figure out myself. For example, one of the problems was I had to do some problem saying, how many ways can you arrange 9 songs? That's easy. 9! If you don't get what I mean, it's actually 9 factorial with an exclamation point on it. And then there was this problem when I had to choose a few from the total number of cards. I had to choose like 13 of the 52. Then the permutation would be 52 choose 13, and I would have to do that on my calculator. What I was saying for my speech, that I was doing pretty good with the chapter assignments, and I had to, for each chapter assignment, I had to give out 2 comments to the class about a certain topic, and that was pretty much what was all I was gonna do. No, they don't work in groups, they work on their own. And then for principles of bio, we had to work in groups. For labs, we had several labs throughout the semester, and they weren't even as much as the lectures itself. And for the lectures, it was pretty much fully online. It was web-based, so it was hybrid instruction. And then after I did my bio assignments, I would get my grade right away rather than my professor just putting the grades in himself. But yeah, at least I did something good right there. And then when it came to the midterm project, I felt like I only had 7 days to do it because I went to Hong Kong again for the second time. I was in RVCC. First time was because I had to go see my grandpa, who passed away eventually after the third day I was there. He was 84. And then the second time I was there while I was in college was just recently, March 7th to 17th. I had to do something similar for the final project of bio because I had to put a little more emphasis in the final than on the midterm. And also it was worth more points, but I ended up getting a perfect score on the final and not on the midterm. So the midterm was worth 325 points, the final was worth 350. I got 317 out of 325 on the midterm, and then I got a perfect 350 on the final. Even though I don't think I did as good on the final as I did on the midterm, but hey, I wish I got some more material on the final that I understood better. I got all the vaccine statistics, and I had to do a project on the measles. And I could choose one of 2 disorders I had to choose from, but for the final it was narrowed down to 2. Whereas the midterm, it was many others. I had to come up with an organelle and then a disease. Then I ended up doing okay in the course. I got a 96.9 average for the semester, so I felt like I did good there despite it being so hard as I thought. So that concludes semester number 4. And today I'm looking forward to my SGA induction, which is tomorrow, and I'm going to be inducted as a senator, and I'm going to be sworn in, and that's when my term begins. I'm going to be at RV for another year, and hopefully I get to experience what it's like to be on student government. So my role is to advocate for student body, which means help students with anything they need in terms of the campus, and I have to attend weekly meetings and general assemblies. I have to do a slide about myself every month for every general assembly. So yeah, I'm actually looking forward to that. So I guess that's the end for this video. Please be sure to leave this video a like, comment, and subscribe. And this is Matt signing off.